analysis. That's probably one of the best things I've heard, and perhaps because I think they were surprised. I always thought Barack Obama was a stalking horse. They started with Hillary with the presumption that she was going to get it. I couldn't believe when he started to run. It indicated to me when I realized that it was serious that they didn't have the control in the Democratic Party that I thought they had, and that concerned me. Now we have, and I've got questions for you, Kevin, from the chat room, one of which is, what do you think now? And is she positioning herself? I think she's been injured by carrying Barack Obama's water as Secretary of State, but what do you think she's doing now, and do you think she's going to run in 2012?
Well, first of all, she needed to get out of the Senate, and that's something that my readers ask me a lot is, why did Hillary leave the Senate? If she had stayed in the Senate, she would have had to have voted for all of this craziness that's come up since January of 2009 in what I call the golden age of hope and change, the Obama presidency. She would have had to voted for Obamacare and all these crazy measures, all the bailouts, all the stimulus package that did nothing. So she needed to be out of the Senate because you saw how her one vote on the Iraq war was such a detriment to her going forward as a presidential candidate. Imagine her trying to ever run again with all of the craziness chalked up.
See, I guess maybe I'm too much of a romantic. I would have imagined her using, because she would have become Senate leader, is using that position to, in fact, position herself as the moderate and get votes against the Obama agenda. But if you're right, if they viewed that, and of course even Republicans did in the beginning, Barack Obama's got a mandate and we've all got to help him, whereas in fact, Barack Obama was elected not because he's Barack Obama, but because he wasn't George W. Bush. And that was the mistake we all made. Well, so you support her getting out of the Senate. Do you think now she should resign the Secretary of State and position herself for a run against him in the primaries?
The one thing I want to correct that I don't agree with in your last statement was that she would not have become majority leader, because she was very low on the totem pole in terms of seniority, and the Democrats since 2004 wanted to run Obama. That they had started grooming him, with that speech that he gave at Kerry's convention in Boston in 2004. Right. They had wanted him, so they would have never allowed her to become majority leader. And they already have several people in line. When Harry Reid is defeated this coming fall, Dick Durbin will be the next Senate majority leader. They wouldn't have given it to her, and I don't think they would give it to any woman. I think it's too much of a boys' club. But in terms of her motivations for the future, there is something really weird going on in terms of fundraising right now. So I don't know what her plans are, but the old Hillary for President campaign fundraising network has been reactivated. So it's coming out of a slumber, and I don't know what the intended purpose is. It might be that they're trying to raise money to give to candidates that Hillary supports that are Democrats that the left is not going to support, because all across the country we're seeing leftist challengers to many moderates in the primaries this year. So the left is trying to push even more crazy people upon us.
Yeah.
And the Clintons might be trying to salvage the party, especially after the big losses that are coming in November.
Yeah.
They might be trying to stage a coup and take us back to that Jacksonian centrist Clinton moderate level of Democrat that I was always a support of and I've been alienated from because the party decided to go left.
That's a very good point. And also you've got Bill offering, going back into being offered as like a lottery if you donate to her to, get rid of that a $700,000 debt to a pollster. It is, they're both trying to suddenly raise money and get rid of certain existing debt, which is interesting. I, of course, do not have a very high opinion of Billy Jeff, but beyond that, part of what you'd communicated me in an email earlier, Kevin, with Hillbuzz was, and I found this very astute, is media in general now, and Hillary would face this again if she ran, and just like Sarah Palin's going to face it, deliberately using the word polarizing to take down female candidates. Can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, we've actually seen this as something interesting going on for some time, and I would love for your listeners and people out there to really study this, because one of the detriments that we have not being leftists is that there aren't grad students being taught to do these kind of things as thesis studies, but I'd love to see a study on the media's use of the word polarizing against female candidates. It's been done to Hillary Clinton for the last 20 years now, but during her presidential campaign, it was one of the things that the Obama people really hammered her with. And I found when we would go on the ground for her in different states, some of the doors that we'd knock on, people would come to the door and they'd say, we really would like to vote for her in the primary, but we can't because we don't think she'll win the general election because she's too polarizing.
Oh.
And when I would push on that word and I'd ask them, what does that mean? What is that about? They'd say, oh, she's just really polarizing. Well, what does that mean?
What does it mean?
Well,
exactly.
She polarizes people. And that tells me they're not coming up with this on their own. This is Anderson Cooper, it's Chris Matthews, it was Tim Russert telling them this word, then they just repeat it. And wouldn't you know, it was never used against Sarah Palin until after August 29th of 2008 when she was announced as John McCain's running mate.
That's right.
If you do any Google searches matching Palin to the word polarizing, it was never used until she was on the national scene like that. So I believe that this is a DNC directive to the media to take down these female candidates that the left does not want to see move forward. And I think a way to counter that, Palin is like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like once in a generation this woman rises like to combat the powers of evil.
Great, I love that analogy.
She really is. Coming from the north with the Arctic Circle, the North Pole, polarizing could actually be something that we can turn into a positive for Palin that would be unique to her. It would destroy the use of the word polarizing against women forever if men and women could come together and take this away from the left.
I'm looking down through hillbuzz.org, and, I always think of it's like there's Carla Bruni and Sarkozy in France, and I'm thinking, how did the American first couple get, transported over there? You've got this action item, nominate Michelle Obama for TLC's What Not to Wear, Washington, D.C. version. You've got a picture of her in a dress that then blends down into an awful chair and couch of fabric. It's absolutely hysterical. And only, if I may say, only a bunch of gay guys who could have some kind of a view about taste and style that puts everything perfectly in perspective. What kind of feedback are you getting on? I've got contempt for the Obamas, and I make that very clear. How do your fellow Chicago boys, fellow liberals, what's been the response to your sense of national security there, and to your what looks like some kind of mocking contempt of the Obamas in general?
Well, what's really funny is in 2008, I started Democrats for McCain the day after Hillary suspended her campaign. So on June 8th of 2008, that summer, and it was a hard decision for me because I had been taught to never have a Republican friend. I actually once was set up on a blind date with a guy that I got up out of the table and I left because I found out he was a Republican.
Oh, dear.
Like that's how much I had the blinders on, Tammy. Well, I started Democrats for McCain because I knew who Obama was. I knew what he would do to the country. I feel like Cassandra and Troy because I warned people about what was going to happen, and everything I've said has come true so far.